What kind of films were so intense that entire countries tried to shut them down? The 1970s pushed boundaries like no decade before it. Directors chased shock, censors panicked, and some stories vanished almost instantly. Yet the more these films were restricted, the more people wanted to see them. Let's uncover the 10 70s movies the world tried hardest to hide. Number 10. The Last House on the Left, 1972. It started as a low-budget project, but it hit the world like a storm. Wes Craven's early work did not rely on large sets, polished lighting, or Hollywood budgets. Instead, it leaned heavily on raw emotion and painfully realistic tension. Viewers at the time were used to tidy endings and safe storytelling. This film delivered the opposite. It focused on ordinary people, ordinary settings, and situations that escalated into deeply distressing territory. That grounded tone frightened audiences because it felt close to real life, where control can slip away without warning. Censorship boards across Europe reacted quickly. Some felt the tension was too suffocating, others objected to the emotional cruelty on display. Several countries refused to screen it at all, labeling it too harsh for public viewing. In the United Kingdom, it became part of a long list of titles restricted on home video. Ironically, those limitations fueled its popularity even more. College students shared copies quietly, and a reputation formed around the idea that the film was too much for the average viewer. Today, The Last House on the Left is remembered as a turning point in independent cinema. It proved that a small film could spark a giant debate. Whether viewers admire or avoid it, the discussion it started about boundaries and realism still lingers. Number 8. Cannibal Holocaust, 1979. This is the film that blurred fiction so convincingly that officials stepped in. Shot as if it were a discovered footage documentary, it followed a small group of filmmakers who head into a remote environment and never return. Later, their footage surfaces, revealing their journey and the troubling decisions they made along the way. The problem for censors was not only what the film implied, but how real it looked. The camera shook, the scenes felt unpolished, and the sound carried the weight of authenticity. Italian authorities famously detained the director because they believed certain moments might involve real harm. Actors had to come forward publicly to prove they were alive and well. Once that misunderstanding was resolved, a different issue emerged. The movie included real mistreatment toward animals, something critics condemned heavily. This led many countries to restrict or ban the movie outright. The United Kingdom listed it among the infamous video nasties. Australia withheld it entirely for decades. Still, the film found a following. Horror enthusiasts, collectors, and genre fans viewed it as a challenge, a test of nerves. Supporters praised its message about media sensationalism and how far people will go for attention. Detractors questioned whether shock was worth the cost. Regardless of stance, the film left a permanent mark on cinema. It showed how easily a story can slip into legend when truth and fiction are too tightly intertwined. Number 7. Fight for Your Life, 1977. If there was a film from the decade that pushed the limits of tension through dialogue alone, this was it. Fight for Your Life delivered fast, heated exchanges and dramatized confrontations that made audiences uncomfortable from the opening scene. The film centered on a family caught inside their own home by a small group of hostile strangers. Unlike other exploitation films that relied on visual shock, this one relied heavily on verbal intimidation and emotional cruelty. The atmosphere turned oppressive quickly, and the tension barely let up. The United Kingdom refused to screen it, calling its tone too hostile and confrontational for public audiences. Censors objected not to the visuals, but to the words used and the harsh treatment implied. Many felt the emotional cruelty crossed a line, making the experience unbearable for some viewers. For years, it was one of the most difficult films to locate legally, surviving mostly through word of mouth and rare recordings traded among collectors. Some viewers praised the film's raw realism, arguing that its unfiltered dialogue captured the fear experienced during high-pressure situations. Others criticized it for going too far, suggesting it amplified hostility instead of critiquing it. Decades later, it remains one of the most controversial titles of the era, proving that a movie does not need elaborate effects to unsettle its audience. Sometimes, words alone are enough to ignite a ban. Number 6. Thriller. A Cruel Picture, 1973. Known internationally as a revenge tale with an icy tone, this Swedish thriller became a censorship target almost immediately. The story followed a quiet young woman who, after enduring a life-altering trauma, trained herself with intense discipline to confront those who harmed her. The film layered dramatic slow-motion shots, heavy atmosphere, and a cold sense of determination. It was stylish, moody, and visually striking, but several scenes pushed far beyond what censors considered acceptable. Swedish authorities banned the uncut version instantly, requiring heavy edits for any form of release. International distributors followed suit, removing sequences that were considered too emotionally harsh for general audiences. Even with edits, the film maintained a reputation as a difficult watch. Collectors searched for unaltered versions the way others hunt for rare artifacts. It quickly became one of those whispered-about titles that viewers approached cautiously. Supporters admired the film for giving power to a protagonist who refused to surrender. They praised its unique style, its icy tone, and its bold approach to storytelling. Critics, however, argued that its harsh moments overshadowed its artistry. Yet no one denied its impact. Thriller: A Cruel Picture stood out among 1970s exploitation films not only for what happened in the story, but for the intense atmosphere it created. It proved that tone alone can leave a permanent impression. Number 5. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974. Few titles from the decade felt as gritty and close-up as this one. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre wasn't polished, glossy, or neat. It was filmed in blazing heat, using a tiny budget, worn furniture, and a cast who looked genuinely exhausted. That raw style made viewers feel like they were trapped inside the story, following a group of young travelers who stumble into a remote farmhouse where nothing feels normal. The air looks heavy, the rooms feel too small, and the sound of machinery whines in the background like a warning. Surprisingly, the film shows far less than people remember. Many first-time viewers swear they saw things that never appear on screen. That's because the editing, sound design, and frantic camera work trick the mind into filling in the gaps. Censors didn't appreciate this psychological trick. They argued the movie felt too intense, even without graphic visuals. It was denied a release in multiple countries, including a near-total ban in the United Kingdom that lasted for decades. Instead of burying the film, the restrictions turned it into a whispered legend. People passed around grainy copies like a rite of passage. Number 4. The Exorcist, 1973. This film didn't just unsettle audiences, it created headlines. When The Exorcist arrived, viewers weren't prepared for its cold, serious tone. The story followed a young girl whose behavior begins changing in terrifying ways, leading her family to seek help from every expert they can find. The scenes of distress, the shaking rooms, the strange voices, and the physical transformation of the child all combined into something audiences hadn't witnessed before. The film didn't rely on cheap thrills. It confronted viewers with emotional fear. Early screenings caused intense reactions. People fainted, rushed outside for air, or left halfway through. Ambulances reportedly waited outside theaters. News outlets jumped on the chaos, amplifying the idea that the movie was simply too much for the average moviegoer. Across the United States, groups protested against its release. In the United Kingdom, local councils banned it entirely, making it unavailable in many towns for years. The more censors tried to control it, the more audiences wanted to see it. Lines stretched around the block. Critics argued over whether it was brilliant or irresponsible. Some saw it as a masterpiece of psychological horror. Others believed it pushed emotional distress too far. But everyone agreed on one thing. No film before it had shaken an entire generation quite like this. Even today, its reputation remains unchallenged. Number 2. Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS, 1975. This film wore controversy on its sleeve from the very first frame. Made in Canada but set during a fictionalized version of wartime Europe, it followed a strict and cruel commander who oversees a camp of prisoners. The tone was deliberately shocking, blending cold authority with harsh punishments. The filmmakers weren't aiming for realism. They wanted to provoke strong reactions, and they accomplished that mission immediately. Censors had no interest in defending it. Germany banned it outright. The United Kingdom refused to give it a certificate, effectively blocking any public screening. Many other countries followed suit, pointing to its exaggerated cruelty, harsh treatment of prisoners, and stylized discomfort. Even collectors sometimes admitted it went too far. But ironically, that very reaction kept the film alive. People wanted to see the movie entire nations tried to erase. Over the years, it gained a strange cult following. Fans described it as wild trash cinema, a film that doesn't pretend to be anything more than a shock piece. Critics called it tasteless and unnecessary. Yet, even harsh reviews couldn't dim its influence. The film spawned several unofficial sequels, each attempting to capture the same shocking energy. Whether respected or rejected, the movie earned its place among the most notorious banned films of the 1970s. Number 1. The Beast in Heat, 1977. This is possibly the most extreme example of 70s exploitation cinema. The Beast in Heat combined wartime themes with fictional cruelty, presenting a story that was intentionally disturbing from beginning to end. It portrayed a secret military operation run by a merciless officer who uses inhumane methods against prisoners. The tone was fierce, the performances exaggerated, and the atmosphere intentionally uncomfortable. Nothing about the movie aimed for subtlety. It was created to shock. European censorship boards reacted instantly. The United Kingdom banned it without hesitation, listing it among the most controversial video nasties. Italy restricted screenings heavily, and many countries dismissed it outright. Distributors struggled to release it legally, and most surviving copies circulated underground. Even fans of exploitation films struggled with its content, calling it one of the hardest watches ever produced. Yet the movie gained notoriety not because people loved it, but because people whispered about it. It became the forbidden title collectors bragged about owning. Discussions online call it one of the final barriers of extreme cinema. Critics argue it goes far beyond what storytelling requires. Supporters claim it represents the furthest edge of the exploitation wave that defined the decade. Either way, it remains the most infamous banned film of its era. The 1970s proved that movies can shake entire nations when they hit a nerve. Some of these titles became cult treasures, others stayed buried, but every one of them challenged what audiences thought cinema could do. Which film surprised you the most? Share your thoughts below, and remember to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more hidden corners of movie history.